What's up everyone, it's Kelly and today I've got another swatch review for you. So today we are talking about the OPI Spring 2025 collection, which is called OPI'm Dreaming. Now OPI is a mainstream salon brand and all their polishes are 3-free, meaning they are free of formaldehyde, toluene, and DBP. And today I'm reviewing their regular line of polishes. They also have their Infinite Shine line, which is supposed to be more longwear polishes. And those actually are in a different set of colors, so I'm going to do a separate video on those. But we've got 12 polishes to go over today, with the exception of one. They're all the same formula, which is that sort of glass fleck shimmer that they do. And then we do have one holo polish. So let me just get into the swatches because I've got some thoughts on them. I'm a little conflicted, not gonna lie, but we'll talk about it a little bit more in detail after I show you the polishes. So let's get into that, then I can talk about pricing, availability, all that good stuff. So roll the swatches. So as with all of my swatch and review videos, I am using base coat underneath all of my swatches just to protect my natural nail and prevent any stains. Today it's the Orly Bonder base coat. And I'm going to start with the one polish in the collection that actually has a different formula from the rest. This is called Case of Glamnesia, and it's actually a linear holo polish. So the rest are that sort of glass fleck shimmer, but this one is a holo, and it's in this really soft purpley sort of base. But what's interesting about it is that we do have these larger holo particles in there, so it can look a little bit more scattered, which is something that I do find with the OPI holos in general. But when you see it dry, you can see that linear sort of rainbow, so I do consider this one to be a linear. I did end up having to do 3 coats for full opacity, so it was a little bit sheer, but I do think the end result is very pretty, and I love seeing a mainstream brand do holo. So now on to the shimmers. The first one is called Welcome to Your Whirl, and this one I would describe as a very light periwinkle shade. I feel like in the bottle it looked a little bit more purpley, but on my warm undertone it definitely leaned a little bit more blue. And then this one has a golden shimmer running throughout, as well as those slightly larger golden flecks that you can see. They kind of hit the light a little bit differently, and this one I really enjoyed the color of. I feel like it reminds me of something a little bit bridal. But one thing I noticed with this type of formula is even if it looks opaque in 2 coats, sometimes it does feel like there's just a little bit of depth missing without doing a 3rd coat. So I ended up applying a 3rd. I feel like some areas looked a little bit more opaque than others before that. So it looked perfect to me in 3 coats, but I do wish that it looked this opaque in 2. Next up, we have the shade Grape Escape. And this one is a purple jelly polish that is totally packed with a blue shimmer, as well as those slightly larger blue flecks that catch the light. And you could see on application, this one was super sheer. Now, I do actually love a jelly finish. I love an intentionally sheer look, but what's really important is to have a high quality jelly. And I did notice that with application on this, it wasn't really consistent across the nail. There were some parts, again, that looked more opaque than others in 3 coats. You can almost kind of see on the left side of my nail this kind of line where it was less opaque. So I ended up actually having to go in with a 4th coat, which was a huge disappointment because I definitely don't like wearing polishes in 4 coats unless they're a very special formula, and I feel like this color is not special enough to merit that to me. So this one ended up being a disappointment, especially because it's a purple, and I do love a purple polish. And then we have the shade Happy Play-ce, and this one is actually the same formula as Grape Escape. So we've got this sheer, almost milky jelly that's in a blue color, and again we have the blue shimmer in there as well as the slightly larger blue flecks. And again, this one was definitely on the sheer side. It felt a little bit more opaque than Grape Escape because it had that sort of crelly milkiness to it. But again, I noticed in 3 coats it was still a touch patchy, and I just didn't love the way that that looked, so I ended up having to do a 4th coat. Now, I will say the end result of this color is absolutely stunning. I love this soft blue with that intense blue sparkle in there, but again, I just don't think it's unique enough to justify having 4 coats of it. Then we are back to the more consistent formulas, these more opaque ones. This one is called Air We Go, and this one is a sort of blue toned base, but it's got a nice warmth to it. And then we have some additional warmth because there is a golden shimmer, and again, that slightly larger gold fleck. And something about this polish also feels very bridal to me. I do love an almost white shimmer, especially with that little warmth to it. And I feel like with that sort of blue tone, it kind of feels like you're something blue. So I really enjoyed that. This one I did end up doing in 3 coats, and I think it looks really nice in person, but up close on HD in the camera, especially around my cuticle area, I felt like you could kind of see there are spots where it just didn't apply perfectly on my nail, and I think that's just the nature of this formula. It's something that I'm kind of struggling with throughout this video, but sometimes it does level out, not all the time. It really just depends on the color. Next up, we have the shade Reality Check Ya Out, and this one is a minty base color, and we've got a really interesting shimmer in here. So this one's actually more of a duochrome purpley blue kind of shimmer, again with those slightly larger flecks in there. And I started off with 2 coats, and I have to say, as far as the formula went, this one did give me a consistent opacity in 2 coats. It still had a little bit of that crelly-like feel to it, so it wasn't as opaque, but at least it was consistent. So if I wanted a slightly more sheer look, I could wear this one in 2 coats, but I ended up applying a 3rd coat just to see it in more full coverage, and I thought that shade was really beautiful. I feel like this is also going to be a good transitional spring into summer kind of shade. Moving on, we have the shade AppointMINT Confirmed, and this one is a greenish yellow base that has the golden shimmer as well as the slightly larger golden flecks, and this one you could see was pretty sheer on first application, but I will say this sort of greenish yellow color does tend to always be 3 coats on me, so the fact that it was pretty much there in 2 coats I actually found to be pretty impressive. And again, it did feel pretty consistent across the nail, but I did end up doing it 3 coats for nice full coverage, and I thought this shade was gorgeous. This is the type of color that I don't mind doing 3 coats on because I feel like it's worth it, and the end result is very consistent, beautiful, and it's really hard to find a shade like this that's opaque in 2 coats. Then we've got the shade Reoccurin Gleam, and this one is a very light pastel pink base, and this one is another warmer tone, again with that golden shimmer as well as the golden flakes running throughout, and this was another shade I really enjoyed. For whatever reason, I've been so drawn to these very light pinky tones, maybe because it's February and it kind of gives me Valentine's Day vibes, but again, this one I actually did think looked good in 2 coats, not fully opaque, but at least consistent across the nail. But if I want full coverage, I can go in with a 3rd coat, and I just think it's a really beautiful, elegant, sort of classic neutral leaning color. And for some reason, we keep going back to this sort of jelly-like formula. This one is Keep It Surreal, and this one is a sort of peachy salmon color with an interesting pinky shimmer running throughout, as well as the slightly larger flecks in there. And this was just another one where I felt like the coverage was not consistent. I thought I was going to get it in 3 coats, but you can see when I was done applying it, it looked so patchy on my nails. So I ended up doing a 4th coat, and I feel like, again, for this type of color, it's just totally not worth it. This doesn't feel like a unique enough shade, although I do love that combination of the pink with the orange. I just feel like I could get this from another brand in less coats. Moving on, we have the shade Beauty School Popout. This one is another orange tone, but this time it's more of a golden yellow leaning kind of color. And again, we have the golden shimmer as well as the golden flecks. And this one, I honestly love this color. It's so bright and fun. I love this type of golden yellowy shade for spring because it just reminds me of all the flowers blooming, and I think it's so beautiful. And I do love yellow nail polish, but I find that it doesn't really suit my skin tone so well, so whenever I find a slightly orangey toned one like this, I always find that it works a little bit better. But I ended up doing 3 coats. I love the way it looked in person. Again, I feel like around the cuticle area you could see some tiny imperfections, but that's only on camera. I felt like I couldn't see that in real life. Then we have Mirror Mirror on the Awe, and this one was a very, very light almost white beige color that had the golden sparkle as well as the golden flecks. And this was another one I ended up really liking in person, but it's just hard with this type of polish because they're not as self-leveling, but they do level out as they dry. So sometimes it can look a little bit patchier and less consistent, but in person, it's a lot more forgiving of a color because nobody's looking at your nails as closely as this camera. But I actually really liked the way that it looked in 2 coats. I ended up applying a 3rd just to see, but I feel like I can definitely wear this one as a 2-coater. And again, it just feels like a nice neutral type of tone. And then finally we have Hands in the Clouds, and this one is a sheer white base that actually has a silvery shimmer as well as the silvery fleck. And this one I found to have an almost pearlescent shimmer to it. I felt like you could see the brush strokes a little bit more. So I ended up having to to do, of course, 3 coats for full opacity. I think this is a really pretty shade, another kind of bridal looking color to me, and I do love that silvery tone in there instead of the gold that we saw in the majority of the polishes. But again, I just feel like this one might be a kind of intermediate formula because it's hard to get it to look consistent and smooth. So here are all the polishes together, and I have to be honest, I know I'm being pretty harsh in this review, and in person, I think these shades are a lot more forgiving. Aside from the 3 that ended up taking 4 coats for full coverage and were just not worth it in my opinion, I feel like these formulas were good. It's just kind of hard to work with this type of thicker shimmer formula when you're working with most brands because it's just not as self-leveling, but I do think that OPI is better at that than other brands tend to be. So it does end up working out once you apply it, but I still don't know if this is something I would recommend for beginners just because it is kind of hard to get that consistent look across all your nails. And I do think that it evens out after 3 coats for the majority of them, but if you have longer nails, you probably need to do more because my nails are pretty short and it's easier to get full opacity that way. So yeah, I don't know, kind of a struggle, but let me talk you through it a little bit more. So yeah, those are the polishes, and like I said, I am a little conflicted on these. I feel like I keep going back and forth as to whether I love them or whether I don't love them. I definitely think that some perform better than others. In general, I do think the colors are really gorgeous, and I do love this sort of glass fleck shimmer type of thing that OPI has done, but historically, it's not a type of finish that plays well with me. I feel like it tends to look so patchy when I apply it, but OPI is very self-leveling, so I did notice that these leveled out really nicely as they dried, but it also takes more coats than I usually like to wear, although it is a less expensive brand, so I can justify wearing 3 coaters. And I also feel a little conflicted because I do think that these look worse on camera than they do in person. Like I feel like close up in HD, you can really see all of the imperfections and where it looks like it's not even on the nail. And since I'm so used to seeing polishes that way, I feel like it makes me like this type of finish a little bit less, even though in person, I do think that it is very pretty. So yeah, I don't know how to feel about these, but I feel like in general, I'll probably enjoy wearing them, but something is just putting me off very slightly about them right now. So yeah, I just keep going back and forth, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts, so definitely let me know in the comments. Now let's get into pricing and availability. All of these polishes are available wherever OPI is sold. I get mine from retailer Beyond Polish, and there the 15 milliliter bottles retail for $9.25 USD each. I also have a discount code for them, so you can use the code KELLI to get 10% off your order. And they do have a lot of other mainstream and independent brands, so you can check them out if you're interested. But yeah, like I said, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Have you tried any of these? What do you think of the colors? What do you think of the formula? What do you think of this type of shimmer? I'll leave it all in the comments. We can chat about it. If you enjoy my swatch and review videos, please hit that like button. It really helps me out. It lets me know I'm doing a good job. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe. I love you all, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye. Today's Would You Rather question is, would you rather have 4 arms or 4 legs? Easy answer for me, I would rather have 4 arms because that would be just more nails to paint, because I feel like I do not have enough fingernails for the amount of nail polishes that I have. And if I had 4 arms, then that would be twice as many nails, and then I could paint my nails like a lot of different colors at once. So easy answer for me. But I feel like practically it probably makes more sense to have 4. Actually, no. I feel like it would make sense to have 4 arms anyway, because then you could do more multitasking. But maybe you could be faster if you had 4 legs. I'm not really sure. But let me know your answer in the comments. We can chat about it. And I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.
You say you don't wanna get in trouble, that you're doing fine 'cause you got me. I don't wanna break your little bubble, but